Words are free. We can dispense them without cost, but words can be priceless. So we can either make them immortally bad or we can make them priceless. Welcome everybody to the Warrior Podcast. This is Frank Lardino, your host and creator. I'm going to share some unbelievable secrets with you guys today on the most powerful force on earth. The most powerful force on earth. And you know what it is? It's not love. It's words. Words are the most powerful force on earth. Stay with me, and I'm going to prove it to you. Any kind of words. Spoken words, written words, and words in song. I'm going to go through some scenarios with you where the power of words just almost immeasurable. First of all, words can create global war or global peace. If we look at a little bit of history in the Adolf Hitler times, Hitler used words for propaganda, and through that propaganda that was repeated over and over again, he created a sentiment against the Jews. That's how powerful words are. And the way we use our words can determine the type of life we live. Now, I do a lot of commenting on the word offended, the ability of words to offend. Well, we give the words coming at us power. And that'll be another thing we talk about here. There's not only the power of words as we deliver them, but there's the power of words as we receive them. So if you are one who gets offended, I would argue that that's on you. Okay. That's a whole nother conversation, which we will have. So I want to give you some personal life examples of, the power of words. We're going to start out with the negative ones. I had a dear friend for several decades. He was what I would call my best friend. He was, I would call him my big brother. We got in a disagreement about a person, and the words offended him so much that he walked out of my life forever. Now, I wasn't intentionally trying to offend him, and I didn't think that what I said should have been offensive, but it obviously was. He empowered my words enough to break off a 25-year friendship. I know a lot of people that this has happened to you, too, and many of you out there, probably has happened to you where you have a disagreement. This is why when we talk about politics or religion, especially in this day and age where people are very sensitive about words, words have the power to break up relationships forever. Now, I have a lot of male friends because I'm a male, and I've heard some horrific things from wives to husbands. Now, I'm not a chauvinist or anything, but because I'm on the receiving end of these conversations with my male friends, here's some of the things that I've heard. I wish you were dead. This is a wife to a husband. I should have married the other guy. You were just a bench player. You're terrible with money. You only care about yourself. You are selfish. Step up and be a man. These are things that when a wife tells a husband, these are damaging. And sometimes these things have permanence. One of the worst things I ever heard was a mother to a child, a mother to her adult son. I wish you were never born. I wish you were never born. Now think about the effect that has on a young man or a young woman when those words come out of her mother's mouth. Could be a father's mouth as well. That isn't a scar, in my opinion. That is a wound that will never heal, or at least have great difficulty healing. So there's an example of how the spoken word has enough power and enough resonance to have permanence in somebody's life. And one of the things that really drives negative words is anger. And I'm always talking about anger when I'm coaching people, and I'm talking about anger when I podcast. and make videos because when we're angry, we don't make good decisions. When we're angry, we say things that are mean that we cannot take back. We can always circle back with a sorry, but being aware that when we're angry, we say things we shouldn't say. We say things that can be permanent that we can never take back. Same thing with the written word. We can write things that way as well. So I had an interesting scenario with a client. She's a therapist. She didn't like my accountability principle, and that is take accountability for everything that happens to you in your life because it's empowering. When you take accountability for everything that happens to you in your life, then you start to think about, I could have made changes, to change the outcome. But her viewpoint is it's all about feelings. Where did these feelings come from? Who did you wrong? Why'd they do you wrong? We have to look at this and dive deep and get in. Like, I'm not a proponent of psychology like that. So I asked her one time, what is your main objective when you get a new client? And she said, to keep them coming back. And I said, thank you for being honest with me. I said, if I were a therapist, my main objective would be to get that person healed and on their way as quickly as possible. And she said the following to me: you can't do that in one conversation. I said, okay, well, let me fill you in on a conversation here. One of my friends was having a hard time, possibly going to jail for things that he didn't really do. I had heard through the grapevine that he was hurting. He wasn't even a really good friend or a close friend, but he was a good friend, okay friend. He was a friend of a friend. And when I heard that he was in trouble, I called him up the next day. I said, hey, you just popped into my head. How's it going? And the guy opened up to me. He told me everything. He's like, all this stuff is happening to me in business. I could go to jail. I've been fighting it, but the system slanted against me. He went into all these things. And here's what I said to him. I'm paraphrasing. I said, you, sir, you are a visionary. You create things out of your head that, you're flying at a different level. You're an entrepreneur. And every time you come up with an idea and you manifest the idea into a reality and you start a company, you're always trying to bring in other people you love and care about, so they can reap the spoils of your ideas as well. You are flying at a different level. I told him a couple times in the conversation, I go, never forget that. Never forget what you are, and never forget that you're a warrior, and everything's going to work out. So anyway, that conversation recircled a year later when this friend of mine and I were having a conversation about business that had nothing to do with that previous conversation a year ago. And after the business conversation, he texted me. He said the following, and I'm paraphrasing, but I do have the text message copied in my journal. He said, you don't know this, but about a year ago, you called me out of the blue. I was 1,500 miles from home, away from my family, getting ready to rid them of me. Getting ready to rid them of me. And you told me that I was a warrior and not to give up. And I took that conversation as a sign from God not to give up. So I'm showing this text to my friend who's the therapist. And I said, in one conversation, according to my friend, saved his life. So that's how powerful words are. And we're going to go through a few more scenarios here. I have them written down, so bear with me. Here's a really interesting story about my father, who deserted us when I was an infant. I never saw him. He never visited me. I knew very little about him. To my mother's credit, she always said, someday you'll meet your father. He's a very nice man. That's all she said about him. Well, I finally met him when I was in my 20s, and then I looked him up again in my 40s, and I wanted to know about my family history. So I started visiting him and asking him questions and taking notes because I wanted to know about my family history, and I wanted to immortalize it by writing it in my journals, which, by the way, is the power of the written word. So he kept telling me, it's your fault we don't have a relationship. You're the reason why we don't have a relationship. I'm like, look, I mean, I was born, you disappeared. What, I should spend the rest of my life coming to look for you? He didn't quite understand, or take accountability for anything. So finally I was able to tell him the following, which finally I think it made him understand. I said, you keep blaming me for us not having a relationship through the years. I'm the one that put this meeting together, first of all. And I did it because I wanted to do it. The only thing that you and I share in common that I can see is that we're both fathers. And I remember when my first child was born and they handed me this little baby right out of the womb, this newborn child, something came over me that there would never be a force great enough on this planet to keep me from this child. I said, that's what being a father's all about. And he sat there for a second and he looked around and contemplated and he said, you're right. I dropped the ball. Now, the story isn't about those words that I told him. They're about the words that I told him right before he died. My dad was a street guy. He didn't take accountability for anything in his life. He always blamed everybody else for everything that happened in his life, and that was not the way I roll. I don't roll that way. My dad's energy was not complementary to my energy. I didn't respect the man. I didn't even like being around him anymore. I found out about my family history. I used to buy him food and beer and wine and stuff just to help supplement him, but I never gave him money because he was a gambler. So I received a call from his cousin. His cousin said, he's on hospice. He's not going to be around much longer. I just wanted you to know. So I called him and I said, hey, Dad, how you doing? And he's like, I'm hurting. He said, I'm checking out and I know it and it's okay, which that in itself is a pretty amazing thing for someone to say. And he said, I'm down like to 90 pounds and, I'm okay to check out. He goes, but I'm in a lot of pain right now and my gut's really in pain and there's nothing they can do for me. So he told me his whole story. We exchanged some other words. So I told him, Dad, I'm proud of you. He says, why are you proud of me? I never did anything for you. I said, I'm proud of you for 3 reasons. Number one, you were a street guy and you had a really tough life and you're a survivor. You had to be strong to live on the streets and be a survivor. I said, also, I'm proud of you that you took care of your mother till the day she died. That is very noble, and that is the highest and best honor you can pay your parent, to take care of her till the day she died. And I said, and finally, you got it right as a parent. Your son, Anthony, is an amazing young man. You stuck with it start to finish for the first time in your life, and you did it. He's the crown jewel, man, of your achievement, and I'm proud of you. And he said, wow, you don't know how much that means to me. And so anyway, I said these words to him. Some of my friends and family said, why'd you do that? The guy was kind of a scoundrel. I said, why did I do it? Because I could do it, first of all. What is wrong with giving somebody comfort in their end of days? And I wasn't lying to him. I had to dig for these things, but what were the redeeming qualities of my father? And I was able to tell them to him. And what is wrong using the power of my words to give the man comfort in his last few days of life? And he did die a few days after that conversation. So again, we're talking about the power of the words. Now, after my father, I met him and whatever, all these people in my family lineage on my father's side started connecting with me. And, I didn't know them, but they knew that I was communicating with him. So, I was kindled some relationships with some of my cousins and stuff, and it was really cool. And in recent times, my cousin texted me, and I have only had maybe 3 or 4 conversations with her in my whole life. And she told me that things weren't going great in her life, and could she talk to me? And so we had a long conversation, and it was, the same thing it was the words, my words gave her comfort. I was trying to find an angle in where she could find gratitude in a bad situation instead of looking at the darkness of the situation. And after the conversation, she texted me. She said, "Thank you. I feel a lot better." And then the next day, I texted her and I said, "Hey, I'm just checking up on you. How you doing?" And it's the power of the words to ease somebody's pain and give them some comfort. Another story that happened to me where I didn't even realize the power of the words. My best friend in high school, he was my friend for only about a year, and that friendship broke up over words. But and my buddy Billy, he was an amazing kid. He's the first friend that ever told me I love you, and we were just teenagers. Yeah, after we had a beef, he said, "I'm so sorry." He said, "I love you." Like, that was like, whoa. That was powerful to me. My buddy Billy, after, sometime after high school, he wound up committing suicide. And I remember getting a call from his mother, and she was crying, and she told me the story, and she said he always he regretted the ending of our friendship. So I don't remember what I said to her. And many years went by, bringing us to like 2 years ago. So like 4 decades after he passed, his sister found me, and we talked and rekindled, and I feel like she's my sister now. And she said, "By the way, I'm, doing like a little tribute wall to my family, and my mom had a letter that you wrote her when Billy died, and she kept it in her journal because it gave her strength and serenity." And I said, "I wrote your mom a letter?" I didn't even remember writing her a letter. I was in my early 20s. And she says, "When I find the letter, I'll call you and I'll read it to you." And when she read the letter to me, I actually cried. I couldn't believe that these words came out of my mouth as a 20-something year old. I could have said these words today. It was like it really. And she said that letter always meant so much to her. So we go into the power of the written word. And so, guys, if you embrace what I'm telling you about the power of words, and you understand, like, you wield great power with your spoken word and your written word, you can really use your words to enhance your life. Now, in business, for instance, words are also very powerful. I'm a real estate agent, and I have a construction company, and we're often in negotiation. So like in real estate, for instance, I was taught there's 3 kinds of negotiators. There's the competitive negotiator, the compliant negotiator, and the collaborative negotiator. The competitive negotiator wants to win at all costs. And a lot of times they use bully tactics. They'll use profanity. They really try and get you backpedaling. I remember having a competitive negotiator. I submitted an offer on one of her listings, and she called me up right away and said, "Thank you for the shit offer." So I knew right away she identified herself as a competitor. And as we were going through this conversation, I could see like she was really trying to bully and push me backwards. And I just told her, "I'm going to hang up the phone now. When you are ready to have a conversation in a professional, civil manner, then we'll continue this conversation. But until then, I'm going to have to let you go for now." And I hung up the phone on her. I told her I was going to do it. And that's how you cool off a competitive negotiator. So she was trying to use her words to get me backpedaling, and I used my words to shut her down. Okay. The second kind of negotiator is the compliant negotiator, and they just want to make everybody happy, and they are the most easy to manipulate for the benefit of like my own client, and they're pretty easy to identify as well. They're just too nice. And then the last kind of negotiator is the collaborative negotiator. And collaborative negotiators, they make everybody feel at the end of the day that they got a fair deal. And that's a real art form, because if you're petitioning and campaigning for your client's best interest and you get it, to have the other side feel like they didn't get screwed or they didn't get a fair deal, that is an art form. And all this comes through the power of words. And one of the things in negotiation that is probably the most powerful tool in a negotiation is the walkaway power. If you can convey to the other party that you have the ability to walk away if you don't get what you want, you keep controlling the negotiation. One of the things, I like to do with other realtors when we're having a verbal negotiation, and sometimes the negotiation could be in writing, it could be via email. I'll tell them, well, take your time on your decision. We're going to look at other homes today. That's me telling the other realtor, we're moving on, basically. So, and we're increasing the chances that we're going to find another home that we might like even better than your home. So you better get moving in this negotiation because we have the walkaway power. The same thing happens with buying a car. I don't know if you guys have ever bought a car. It can be traumatic, the back and forth in the office with the salesperson, and then they got to bring their supervisor out, their sales manager. It's a scripted thing. I mean, they all do it basically the same way. And almost inevitably, every time I'm in a car negotiation, I get up to leave. Like, thanks very much. You know what, guys? I'm going to shop around a little bit. I'm not in a hurry. And you try to walk out. And you have to do that convincingly. If you do it convincingly, then you have the upper hand. Another thing I wanted to mention about the power of words, sometimes it's the order of words. It's the order in which we assemble the words, not necessarily the content. One of the things in real estate that I learned was when you ask somebody, do you know anybody looking to buy or sell a home? The brain is thinking in terms of yes or no, okay? But if you ask the person, who do you know looking to buy or sell a home? Then the brain is thinking and digging for, who do I know? Where in the first example, yes or no, if you say no to yourself, then you retire the question and it's over. Your brain stops thinking about it. Even if it's yes, I know somebody, and they could still retire it. But the who do you know looking to buy or sell a home prompts a whole different response in the brain. So, again, we're defaulting back to the power of words. And of course, if we want to examine the written words, look at the Bible and the Quran. These are written words that have been the most influential books in man's history. So careful use of those words are powerful, and we have this power within us. I'm going to shift to words and songs, and I'll share with you the ones that I really love. My favorite song is Saturday in the Park by the group Chicago, because that song takes me right back to growing up in the Humboldt Park area with my grandparents. Really makes me feel good. Another song that I really like is Old Days, also by Chicago. And that one reminds me of my friend Mike O'Connor, who died of cancer. That was one of his favorite songs. And every time I hear that song and that song comes on, I look up at the sky and I point just to let him know, hey, man, I haven't forgotten about you. And again, the power of words. My mom's favorite song for us, meaning it was our song, her and I, it was Me and My Bobby McGee. Me and My Bobby McGee by Janis Joplin. And every time I hear that song, it takes me right back to sitting in a car with my mother where that song came on and she grabbed my hand and was singing the words to me. The power of words. Some of the things about harsh words are very similar to kind words. Harsh words can be immortal, meaning they stay with you and never go away. And it's the same thing with kind words. We have the ability to use harsh words or kind words. But my friends, I'm telling you, when we use kind words, we get an immediate rate of return. And kindness can be very simple. It can be just engaging with people. seeing a stranger, saying hello, thanking a veteran. Like, these are kind words. One of the things I like to do, I made many posts about thanking veterans, but I also thank police officers. When I see a police officer on duty, I'll roll up on him and I'll say, "Hey, officer, thank you for serving our community." And sometimes, based on how I read them, I'll go, "Thank you for serving our community. You guys have a real shit job these days, and it must be really difficult for you. And if you were ever in trouble, I'm a conceal and carry, and I would fight with my life to help protect you." And I mean that. Now think about the effect that has on a police officer when they see the worst of mankind every single day. Police officers are like combat soldiers that have 25-year careers. I mean, they are walking around with some serious crap in their brains. It's, to me, very important to say the kind words and show them appreciation, because they don't get that often. And that one little commentary, that one little thank you can have an everlasting impact on them. It can make them believe, like, yeah, look I'm really fighting for something here. Like, these people really appreciate me. And I think if we collectively use the power of our words in the positive light, showing kindness, showing appreciation, showing gratitude, if we do it collectively, we brighten up the world, and we collectively make the world better for us too. Some of the hardest words for us to say are the most positively impactful words. And this is part of the flaw in human nature, is we always like to be right. And sometimes when we're not right, we hold on to that argument anyway, and we don't want to listen to what anyone else has to say. And, it's really better to be able to say, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I was wrong." Those are really hard words for everybody to say. So those are positive, impactful words. And if you ever get in a scenario where you're at an impasse with somebody and then you find out you were wrong, it's way better to say, "I'm sorry, I was wrong, I made a mistake," than it is to hold it inside you and keep that animus between you and the other person. And of course, one of the most powerful sayings is, "I love you." And I'm going to share a little secret with you. These 3 words, "I love you," are some of the hardest words for me to say. You know why? My mother told me that all the time. "I love you, I love you, I love you." But she hung me out to dry. My mother was not there for me. She left me alone. I mean, I get a lot of stories about that, which some of them are in my book. I was in fear for my life when I was a little boy sometimes because she left me alone. So I'm equating her actions with her words, and her actions were not showing me she loved me. So every time she said she loved me, it was like a lie to me. It was a con. So it's really hard for me to say those words, and I've been working on it my whole life to be able to say those words more freely. But those are hard ones for me. I'm just admitting one of my little flaws here, but I have gotten way better with saying, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." I'm good with being wrong, because when I'm wrong, that means that whatever I was perceiving as correctness wasn't correct. And I don't want to be incorrect on the things that I think about, right? My strongest opinions, I always attach the saying, "but I could be wrong." And when you prove me wrong, I embrace it. I love it, because that means that what I was holding on to as my own personal truth was not the truth. The problem with people is that when we have a disagreement and we want to know, like, okay, I don't agree with you. Like, one of my dear friends, Phil, he's a smart guy. We don't agree on everything. But then when we support our argument, why we think the way we think, we have a whole bunch of considerations that have led us to have this opinion. The problem comes when, one side has, or let's say both sides, they don't have things to back up their opinion. They just have their opinion and they don't have anything to back it up. Or one side has an opinion and they have the things to back it up. Here, this is what I looked at. I hate to use the word facts, because facts are, they're subjective. Like my friend Michael, who's a published author, who I would love to get his commentary on the power of words. He posted something today and it basically said, it's not the facts that form people's opinions. It's the opinions of people that determine what the facts are. And that is true. Like, we are all biased that way. So I don't like to use the word facts, but when we have a disagreement, I'll say, these are the things that I looked at. These are my considerations and why I have this opinion. I'll present them to you. What do you think about it? And most of the time, the people will say, I don't want to see it. So we can't really have even like a collaboration to get to the truth when the other person doesn't want to look at your information, and they want to give you their opinion and they don't have any information. So, I mean, guys, we're all watching the same TV set. I mentioned propaganda earlier on. The TV sets around all over the place. If you have an opinion based on what you see on the TV, I know what's on the TV. So when you come to me and you say something based on what they're telling you on TV, and I say, okay, what do you have as proof, right? Forget about taking somebody else's opinion. Did you do the research? I'm not the kind of person to just take somebody's word for something. I want to do the research. My aunt told me, my Aunt Rose, you have a very curious brain. And because of that, you dive into things, like you really do research on things. And I do pay attention to stuff. And that's why I know words are the most powerful force on earth, because I've already given you examples, how words can ruin relationships forever. They can open a wound up in someone, like telling a child by a parent, I wish you were never born. That's powerful stuff. These are things that we have control over. So the mastery of words runs hand in hand with the mastery of oneself. If you gain more mastery over your emotions, that doesn't mean you don't have them. It means you keep them in balance, especially anger. If you can keep anger in balance, then you're less likely to say very angry words like, I wish you were never born, or I wish I would have married the other guy, that you won't say. So remember, using the power of words, which we all have, you can use them on the dark side of the line and the negative. You can let your anger dictate the words that you use, and you won't have as good a life as if you use your words in a kind, positive way. And we all have the ability to do that. It's like almost stealing, guys. When you realize that kindness and giving of yourself through your positive words and engagements actually help, by helping other people, you get an immediate rate of return greater than that of what you gave to that other person. I'll just share one little secret with you that I thought of. I was going to write a letter to every person that had an impact on my life, telling them what they mean to me. And I was going to fold those letters up and keep them to be handed out on that faithful day when I take the checkered flag and I'm no longer with us. I thought, well, Ma, that will be a good idea. But then I thought, well, what if I don't live long enough to write a letter to all those people? Or what if they don't live long enough to receive the letter? So right now, I'm on a mission. I call them death letters, which is a little dramatic, but I am trying once a week, at least, to write a letter to one person that means a lot to me and tell them what they mean to me. So then when I do die, they can take the letter out and go, wow, he wrote this to me. So just a thought, guys, but I understand the power of words. I'll just share one other story with you because I mentioned my buddy Phil. He had a pretty bad beef with somebody that he cared about, and it really bothered him. And he wanted to write an email back. And he said, what do you think of the email? And I said, well, you're just antagonizing. You guys are going to be just doing battling back and forth then. And I go, is that what you want to do? He's like, no. He goes, I want to end this. And I said, end it as in, are you okay if the person's not in your life anymore? Because the guy did him harm, and he did it in a public forum, which was really a breach of trust, in my opinion. So he's like, yeah, I want to have effect on him. I said, okay. So we worked through the words that he typed. And then I said, he basically said, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at myself because I misjudged you. I thought you were a trustworthy person, that I could count on you, and that you were a good friend. But the fact that you did what you did, we're definitely not on the same page, because I would never do that to a friend. And if you don't understand, the definition of friendship the way I see it, then there's no reason for us really to have a friendship. But it's my fault, not yours. And at the end, I told him, write the words, take care. Because take care has finality in it. It's gentle, but it has finality. It means goodbye. So he read it back to me, finishing with the take care. And he goes, all right, I'm going to hit the send button. I said, okay. Now, I was in the car driving when we went through this whole conversation. And it was about 10 or 12 minutes elapsed. And my buddy Phil called me back. And he's like, this guy has called me 3 times, texting me, emailing me. He's going crazy. I go, that's because you put the take care in there. So those 2 little words drove the guy nuts. But to the positive side of that whole thing, they have a relationship back again, which is good. Anyway, guys, thanks for hanging with me here. I want you to remember one final thought here. Words are free. We can dispense them without cost, but words can be priceless. So we can either make them immortally bad, or we can make them priceless. And if we get in the habit of making our words priceless, life gets substantially easier for us. I love you all. Hopefully you'll get something out of this video. My book is being published right now, called How to Be a Warrior of Light in a Dark World. Chapter 3 is all about the power of words. And I go through some of the stuff we talked about and some other things too. Thank you for joining me today on the Warrior Podcast. I will see you all at our next podcast. And remember, there is a warrior inside us all. Take care, everybody.